So we were actually just catching up and we were chatting about creating content and decided that we should go live and actually talk about it since we're having an interesting combo. And one of the things that I first talked about with you when I watched some of your videos online is that I talked about how your transformation in communication was incredible.
Yeah.
Like the first video I watched, maybe, I don't know how many years ago that was when you did the coffee enema video, but it was just completely different person. So I want to just talk more about like your journey into creating content. You have a big audience now, both on TikTok and Instagram, but what was that like? Why did you hop into it? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so that was like 7 years ago. And something in me just, I guess I was watching other creators create and I was inspired by that. Like when I first started my journey or transformation, I was really getting a lot of value from a lot of people online. And that's when I guess some part of me must have felt like, oh, you should be giving value back on the things that you're learning. And the thing is that at that point, I was not as articulate. I didn't really have camera presence. I didn't know what I was doing, but there was still something in me that had like this desire to share my own perspective. And that's what I did. I just started uploading videos on YouTube and just sharing my life and my transformation, what I was going through. And yeah, if you go back and you look at some of these videos, it's like, it's a completely different person. So like, if you want any evidence of like a transformation of a person, like go to my YouTube channel and just on an expressive level, watch my first videos and then go back and watch my recent videos or even my content on Instagram and TikTok. And you'll be able to see that there was a process that I went through to express myself in the way that I do, and that it's possible that you can start at a place where you're not so confident, you're not so articulate, and you can build that up over time to really, be in your bag as far as it comes to like sharing a message, sharing yourself with the world.
It's so cool too. I love what you're saying there as well, because it's like from being that person, if someone were to watch your content at the beginning and then say this person's going to impact the lives and share content that millions of people see, you probably would have thought they were a liar. But other people would have thought, there's no way that's going to happen. And so it's just cool to be able to see that journey. And something we were talking about earlier as well is how creating content, a lot of people view it as like, oh, that person's narcissistic or that person's all about themselves. But actually, the process of sharing a message and creating content, how impactful that is for your own personal growth, for growing as a human being. I know for myself and for you as well, that's been like a massive hurdle to get over, to be able to express yourself without caring what people think, to be able to express yourself authentically. Let's talk more about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah. So, a lot of people think, like they'll point out influencers or creators in a space and they have this perception of them that they're narcissistic, right? But I have another perspective that's kind of completely opposite. I believe that the people who don't share are the ones that are more narcissistic or have more of that quality, because they're so concerned with what other people think that they are not able to even put themselves out there to be critiqued, to be criticized, right? Wow. So it's like the ones that we do, like we almost have to set our ego aside because it's not comfortable to put yourself out there. Like if I'm going to share something that's controversial, I know that I'm going to get backlash for it. I know that people are going to be pissed off. So in order for me to do that, especially with my energy and just the way I naturally am, it's actually a hurdle that I have to overcome just to get myself to share a perspective that I have that's in me, that's authentic to me. But just to be able to put that out there, I have to push myself.
Yeah.
So the people who are looking at me, they're like, oh, look at you. You just want attention. You just, you're just trying to get people's attention. And it's like, no, well, like when I first started posting, when I first started sharing, I didn't have any like vision of like, oh, I was going to impact millions of people. I just started doing it because there was something in me that wanted to share my perspective. And obviously, the more you grow, the more eyes are on you, the more this opportunity for people to critique you and criticize you grows. So that process itself, it's like it keeps getting harder and harder and more challenging. Now, obviously, I think there are some energies and personalities who they get off on that, like they like the attention, whether it's good or bad. That's not really the case for me. Like I appreciate when people agree with me, but when people disagree with me, I do take it very seriously. When people say comments like what people say online, like I wouldn't say something online that I wouldn't say in person. So when I'm online communicating, it's the same energy, you know. So if I say it online, it's because I'm willing to say it in person, but that's not the case with everybody, right? There's some people who will sit there and type out a message knowing damn well they would never say that shit in person, right?
Especially they wouldn't say it when you got a bow right behind you too, you know?
right. But just the presence of the personal in person experience, it shifts the way people behave. So it's like you have to navigate this reality that we call the internet with that understanding that there's going to be people that don't have that restraint on them, that somehow feel liberated on the internet space to be able to say things because like there's some weakness there, so they almost try to fool themselves into thinking that they're somebody that they're not. Like, you're not tough, bro. Like, what you're saying on this device, that's not who you are. Like, you're fooling, you're trying to fool the world, but you're also trying to fool yourself, knowing that's not who you are. So it's like you have to be careful with that. So you have to have some sort of restraint and some sort of principles when it comes to the online world too. If you wouldn't say it in person, don't say it online, because you're being fake to yourself.
Yes.
And you're convincing yourself of something that's not true.
And I love something you said earlier too, you know, just the process of sharing ideas, and especially the videos you've created, you know, they're super educational, impactful, and powerful as well. There's a process where a lot of people think like, oh, he wants the attention, but when you're a new creator, most of the attention you're getting is negative. It's not like you start creating videos and all of a sudden all these people are saying like, oh, you're amazing. For the most part, you're going through a valley of a lot of shit because you have an idea you want to share. And ultimately, I think it's so beautiful when people go through the courageous process to do it, because everyone has an interesting perspective to share. If they really, truly, deeply connect with themselves, they have an interesting perspective to share. And I think that process of more people being able to be willing and courageous enough to share it is powerful, man.
Yeah. And I think that ultimately what is happening is like we are creating like some sense of like a global community, but just like in any community, like our interactions expose who we are, right?
Yeah.
So if you see something on your feed, something comes on and it triggers you, you respond in a certain way. I'm not worried about the content that made you trigger. I'm worried about what is it inside of you that made you respond that way, because now you're exposed. Like something in you was rattled that you were triggered by enough to comment, right? So I'm looking at the personality, like how do you respond when you're triggered? Do you attack the person?
Yes.
Do you not understand that this is something about you? Like, or are you always pushing it on the other people? So like with that understanding, it makes me have more compassion and more patience with people, because they don't even see it because they're reacting. So before they can even get a chance to like perhaps explore the idea, like maybe it's something within me that I see in this person, and this is why I'm lashing out. And if I address it within me, then that person is irrelevant. You know, they might not see it that way. So with that understanding, you kind of start to have more compassion, understanding, and learn how to deal with people online. So this sharing it, like what we're doing right now, it becomes like a self-development tool, you know, or like you say, a personal transformation tool.
Yes.
So it's really, it is something spiritual about this right here, like what we're doing, because you got to think most people are intimidated to come on live. And that's why most people don't do it, because they know that there's a tension. Like they don't want to open up the app and potentially, or maybe nobody watches, or maybe the person that does watch got something negative to say, you know. But that's the reality of it. That's the risk that you take putting yourself out there. But at the same time, you might find people that resonate with you, and you might be able to build and impact people in a positive way. So if you're so focused on a negative, the value that you would have provided the world will be lost, you know. And so that's a detriment, not to you, but to the world as well.
And I think one of the things that's really powerful, I agree with all of that. Like one of the things that's so powerful is not looking at things in the short term. I know what always helped me in my businesses as well is looking more long term of like, okay, maybe the content I'm sharing and what I'm doing now, it's not the best. But if I keep doing it, like the process we talked about for you years ago, it's eventually going to be a message that's well received for the right people, not by everyone. We don't want to play to everyone, but I think that's such an important part of like going through the process of creating. Your first art piece isn't great. Salvador Dali's first artwork wasn't great. Your first video wasn't great. My first video wasn't great. And even most of my videos now today, I'm still like, oh, that could be a lot better. But it's just the process of that actual creation. And I think recognizing and realizing it is a path, it is a process. It brings a lot of freedom for a lot of people.
And what I would say, like, if somebody's like trying to get it started, forget about the end result. Like, don't just forget about the end result, because what a lot of people do is they focus so much on the end result that they're not able to endure the process. And that's what's happening with, like, you might start posting, you don't see the results right away, and like, oh, this doesn't work, or this is not for me. That's because you're only focused on the end result.
Sure.
When you're focused on the process, you're in love with that process. So you're able to endure it, you're able to go through it. And so the end result just becomes a byproduct of the process. And the process itself is what transforms you into the person that you need to be to even be able to hold the end result.
Yes.
So it's like the concept of giving somebody a large amount of money but never educating them on financial, literacy.
Yes.
They end up just blowing it all, right? Because you gave them the end result, but you didn't take them through the process that would have allowed them to keep that thing, that would have transformed them to be able to be the type of person who can hold and manage wealth. So I really believe in the process. I believe in falling in love with the process and just embracing the process and letting the end result come as a byproduct.
Completely. And I think that's one of the illusions of today a bit is like, let me go just make the money and focus on the money, and then I'll do the thing I really care about. But ultimately, to get to that really great end result, so much of it is about loving the process. So you have to find something that I believe you love the process. At least for me, every time I've been successful in my previous businesses, it's like finding an element of the process I really love, focusing on that element, and then being able to continue to improve that. And, even for me now, the work I'm doing now, it's like, it's so aligned to my purpose. It's all I want to do. I do it on Sundays. I do it on Saturdays. I'm doing it all the time. And I think that's such an advantage when people actually find something they enjoy and love doing. They can really sit into the process more than having to rush to get to an end result so they can get out of the pain they're in by doing the thing they don't like doing. And so that kind of gets more to the passion topic that I know you and I are both interested in. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too, or, feel free to ping anything back to me on that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I think a lot of people are so not enjoying the process because they're not really doing something that is integrated with their own values and belief system, and they're not in alignment with it ultimately. So the process feels like hell. It feels, because there's a difference, right? Like when we're doing something we love, the process still is challenging, but it's different. It's challenging, but you're still able to endure it, and you're still seeing the benefit in it. But when you're going through a process that is for something that you're not in alignment to, that shit really feels like hell. Like on a soul level, it feels like, yeah, you can endure it physically, but on a soul level, it feels like I don't want to be. Like it was when I first kind of came into my awareness of this, my whole transformation. I was working at a warehouse, and when I started to awaken and become aware of what I wanted to do or the direction I was headed, that job, I was able to physically do it, but there was something deeper that when I went there, it was like soul crushing. Yeah. Like physically, I had the strength and the vitality to execute the job, but there was something deeper in me that was like, I don't want to show up. I don't even want to clock in. So that's what I'm talking about. Like when you're doing something that's in alignment with you, you'll still have the process and its challenges, but you'll be able to endure them, and you'll be resonant and have that understanding that this is part of what you should be doing, and this is part of what gets you to that end result. So yeah, I think that we need to find alignment. We need to find alignment. What are the things that bring us that? What are the things that we want to do anyways? Like you're saying, with what you're doing and the work that you've tapped into, it's not like anything you got to clock out from. And this is what I truly believe around this idea of work and home life. Like my work and my home life is integrated. Yeah, it's two in the same, because it's not a burden on me that I need to go somewhere and clock in and then clock out so I can come home. No, it's integrated because it's all part of my beliefs. It's all part of my mission in life. So when I'm sitting here at my desk and when I'm with my family here, where I'm in my property, in my house, it's all integrated because it's all going towards the same goal, because my business is aligned with my values and my beliefs. Yes. My social media presence is aligned with my values and my belief. My family is aligned with my values and my beliefs. There's no need to segregate these parts of life because it's all part of the same thing.
I remember when I worked at an office job and I would get home at the end of my day of working, and it was like I would lay on the couch and be like, ah, finally I'm home. And it was such like a, now I need to watch TV for an hour or open a couple beers just to forget about everything I did for the last 9 hours to be able to feel like myself again. And that's that process of disconnection and then reconnection to try and feel like myself. And I agree completely. It's about finding the alignment between all of them. It's about what do you actually enjoy and love to do, and how can you work towards that mission on a daily basis while giving your unique gifts. You know, one of the things I love to talk about is your zone of genius, right? When you feel your zone of genius and you know what you're uniquely gifted at, or you are uniquely excited to talk about and to give to the world, it changes everything. You have a different energy because you're operating from a place of fun, of giving, of love, of excitement, of passion, rather than like, okay, I got to do this for the money. And I've done, you know, I worked 6 years in an office job. I did my time of like, I'm doing this for the money. I'm doing this to survive. And I think just the transition into actually the passion work is such a powerful process. And one of the things that I often find is that for most people, they're looking and they're saying like, how do I find my passion? How do I find that thing I really want to do, that I really care about? And most people don't realize like you're never going to get the full roadmap. Like you're not, one day you're going to wake up and say, oh, that's what it is. This is what I have to do. That's where I'm going to go. When we talk about faith in life, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, is I think so much of life is like you hear the whispers of your heart, and the whispers of your heart are, I feel like I should do something in this field, or I feel like I should do something with people or with regenerative agriculture, whatever it is. And it's about having the courage to take that next step to go and do it. And I think that's where most people get hung up, is they're saying, I'm going to take the next step one day. I'm going to take it one day when I know the entire process. But I just don't think God or the universe works that way. I think it's a process of saying, hey, faith is taking the first step. And then when you take you take that first step, the next step becomes more clear. And then the next step becomes more clear. And it's this process of going into it slowly with faith, with power, with courage, rather than saying, one day when I know what my passion is, then I'll start operating from it. Love to get your thoughts on that. That's just what I've noticed consistently with clients.
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of, truth to that. With me and my personal journey, I think one of my superpowers is that I was able to just take the plunge. I was able to jump into the abyss and then figure it out as on the way down. Like, just like you said, have that faith that you were going to land into some water, into something soft, that you were just going to survive. But most people are like, well, I got to do some research.
Yes.
And let me set up myself. Maybe I'll work a couple of years and save up X, Y. But it's all an illusion.
Yeah.
All of that shit is an illusion because nothing is guaranteed. And nothing is for sure. Everything that you built during that time could crumble, and different things might change. Like an unforeseen circumstance might arise. You can't wait because life is always changing. Is always
completely
is always morphing into something new. So,
I believe one thing. I'm going to comment on that real quickly. One thing I really believe is necessity is the mother of invention. Like the is what allows you to create usually something incredible and something epic. And I think a lot of people, they want to get to safety before they start creating the thing they want to do. And it is an illusion, because when you get to that place of safety, the ability to create with the same eagerness, the same passion, the same fire is just not there. That's just what I've seen in my own life. It's so different when you're coming from a place of safety before you create that passion.
Hey, check this out. Your sense of security can be a burden to you. Like that shit might be burdening you because you want to hold on to that sense of security. But your level up or the thing that you're wanting to accomplish might actually come from letting go of that shit and taking that plunge like we're talking about. So You're burdened by how much safety you actually feel. It's actually inhibiting your progress.
For sure.
Right? So it's like you can hold on to that safety if you want. But what if there was something more that required you to let go of that safety, but because you're like thinking that the safety is the thing that you need to hold on to, it's actually inhibiting your own development. And so that's one of the things that we did. Like, we were out here homeless. Like, we put ourselves in a very, very challenging situation. And I'm not telling anybody to do this. I'm just using an example. Like, you're right. When you put yourself in that place, you're almost like summoning the strength within yourself that you couldn't summon if you were too comfortable. Because when you're too comfortable, there's no need for it, right? When you're too comfortable, like that thing that's in you, that internal fire and desire that you have to summon in a certain context is not present when
that primal energy, that deeper primal energy, when you really have to go and get it and make it happen, is so different. And I think that's where genius is created too. Like, I see a lot of my friends from the Bay Area, they work in tech and they make good money, and a lot of them want to leave and create their own thing, but they're too comfortable. They're too used to having a lifestyle of 6 figures a year, that the idea of not having that lifestyle and all the trappings that come with it, it's just too scary. And it becomes that weight that holds them down. I agree completely. I cut you off, though. I'll let you keep going.
Well, I was going to say, you know what's the true security, though, as opposed to like having this money and a secure job? The true security is knowing that you're capable of going through hardship and emerging out the other end. Because once you go through that, the material manifestations, they don't matter. Like, that can be taken away from you, but you have this inner confidence that you know, because you've endured that situation, that you could do it again. So like, for me, that's the most valuable thing, like, that I walk around with. It's not any of the physical shit. It's just that inner knowing and confidence that I'm built like that. I'm built to be able to endure because I've done it already. And you can't buy that. You know, you have to go through that.
Completely. I saw a beautiful comment here. A witchy kind of woman just said, creation from a place of safety often lacks passion. I agree completely. I love that. Yeah. And it's really ultimately, you know, it's cheesy and everyone says it, but it's about the journey and not the end destination. So if it's about the journey and not the end destination, if you're just creating from that safe place and making sure everything's safe, how much of that actual journey is going to be the powerful transformation that you want as a human being? I don't think a lot of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Amazing. I feel like we covered this topic pretty well. What else do you want to chat about? What else should we dive into?
Did we cover the things we were talking on? Because I know we had a call previously to this, and we said a couple of things.
Yeah, we were talking a bit about. I want to harp on one point that we talked about at the beginning, because I think it's important for some of the new people who have joined as well. Is just like the real process of personal development that actually putting yourself out there creates. And I think it's the biggest gift that people don't realize. I think a lot of people are waiting to put themselves out there, like we talked about, until they know the entire path and the entire plan. But so many humans that are shy, that don't have a following, have such incredible ideas that they're just too scared to actually put it out in the world. And so, you know, something that you talked about before, when we talked about the beginning of this, is just like that courage to actually go and do that, I think, is the most powerful gift someone can give to themselves as well.
Yeah, there's also this idea like that everything has already been said, right? All the information is out there. So I think a lot of people think that they shouldn't be sharing their perspective, but I guarantee that each one of us here has gained benefit from somebody sharing a message that was already said before. There's nothing new under the sun, but every generation has to reiterate and pass down that wisdom, that knowledge, that experience to a new set of ears, to a new set of people who need that and are, you know, hungry for that value. And that value can come through you, through me. It can come through anyone. And so I do think that the reason these devices exist, just stop looking at the internet like as some very high-tech thing that's like new. Look at it as a community. Look at it as something that we would always been a part of. So we're in a community right now, right? Yeah. What is your purpose? Like, what value do you give to the community? Are you just somebody who's taking? The men go out to hunt and you just eating the food. You're not participating in the hunt. You know, the people are cooking the food and you're not participating in cooking. You know, we're weaving fabrics and you're not participating. You just keep taking and taking and taking. So in this community, what are you here to offer? Like, and that doesn't have to look like what I offer, but you should be striving to find the thing that you can give value to the world, because otherwise you're just a consumer in our community. And I don't know about you, I don't want nobody in my community that's just taking and taking. I want people to be in their bag, in their gift, and be able to offer that to the community, because not only they get benefit from being in their purpose, but we get benefit from the thing that they're here to share with us.
For sure. And I think, there's a lot of people who even think that maybe I don't have anything worthy to give. And I think that comes through giving. You find your worthiness through giving more and more and more. And then you find that golden nugget to actually give to the rest of the community. I love that perspective of looking at it like that. I've actually never heard anyone say it in that way and look at it in that way. And I think that's so powerful.
But also think about what do people come to you for, right? So the more you put yourself out there, people will tell you what they get from you. Mm-hmm. That is going to give you clues on what it is that you're here to do. So the more you put yourself out there, that will naturally manifest, right? But you're not getting any closer by not putting yourself out there, by refraining from sharing yourself. But so it doesn't have, like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect from the beginning, but that process in itself, you put yourself out there, then you start seeing like, oh, I have a knack for giving people a perspective on their life, or maybe some advice, like coaching them, or I have a knack for like articulating a certain thing that people aren't too good at articulating, whatever it is, through the process of putting yourself out there, you're going to discover that, but you need to start today, start immediately, because
let's go.
That's process takes time,
Let's go. Yeah. And just like we talked about at the beginning, your videos, looking at your transformation from a couple years ago, and just saying, yeah, it takes time. It's about the reps, putting it in, doing more. And the more you do, the more you're eventually going to pull out that golden nugget. But it doesn't happen on video one. And I think that's where most people are caught, is that first video, if it's not good, they don't want to put it out. And that's that fear, that's that ego, that deep ego of wanting to be liked, of wanting to be accepted, instead of actually just putting it out in the world, which is so much more powerful and beautiful. And the only way to actually really get acceptance in the long run is by putting it out there, becoming you, being authentic, where people like you and love you for the person that is actually creating and giving that content to the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep, that's all true, man. I wanted to get into maybe we should talk about like just like what is some of the things that you've been doing? Like, I know we said we want to talk about like masculinity, and like maybe we could touch on some of the stuff that's kind of more controversial. Let me start it out, because right now I'm seeing in the landscape, I want to get into masculinity and like my perspective on it, because I hear you talking, I see your videos
yes,
talking about like, men, teaching them how to, be in their masculinity, be in their successful alignment.
yes.
So I have a family, right? I have a son, I have a wife. And so my perspective is a little bit different, because I'm in a relationship where
Completely.
like a committed relationship, right? I'm not like trying to teach you how to play the field or do none of that. So what I see a lot in the community is like men are trying to coach other men, in a certain way. And so, I want to get your perspective on it, because I have my own perspective, especially when it comes to like in the conscious community.
Yeah.
Because, you get the red pill people, and you get a group of men who like trying to get away from women completely. And it's like where's the balance in this, and what approach?
I love this topic. And I also love the fact that you are married and speaking about it too, because I think it's such an interesting balance to walk. Oftentimes I have clients that are married men as well. And for me, a lot of what I look at is masculine and feminine energy. How do you show up in your relationship as that masculine energy if you're the man? How do you show up in that relationship as that feminine woman if you're the woman? And I think ultimately those polarizations, they attract. And what you see happens oftentimes in relationships is 6 months in, 9 months in, 12 months, 24 months, whatever it is, there's a depolarization in the relationship. And what I see oftentimes is it's not, oh, we just dated for a year and a half, so we're just sick of sleeping with each other. It's actually more of the depolarization, because I have clients where they've been married for 15 years and their sex life is still great. And it's because he's really operating strongly from his masculine place, providing what she needs, which is safety. And then he's able to feel supported and loved, and what he needs is that affection and care. And so I think ultimately it's less about like the pickup line to get the girl, more about understanding how do you embody that energy that's most core to you, but also how do you realize that there's a society and a system that's trying to make you less masculine and make her less feminine, which makes everyone in the middle, which is why there's so many people who are single or so many people who are not in relationships that are really super connected and super powerful. And so one thing to go into the marriage thing is like, I'll have a client who will get on the phone with me. He'll be married for 15 years, 12 years. And the moment he starts operating more from his masculine energy, being more of a leader in the relationship, being more in his power, providing more safety, not making her make all the decisions, not making her treat him like a son because he's not doing his shit, the polarization changes and the sexual attraction changes almost immediately. It can be in 1 week. And it's not a pickup line or the thing he's saying. It's about who he's being and how he's operating from. So I'll stop there and let you comment. But
yeah, I love that because I want to take it here. A lot of the conversation that I hear is like, oh, these women are masculine, right?
yes.
And for me, like the way I look at life, and one of my greatest like tactics that I've been able to embrace is like ownership, like complete ownership, right? So when men see women being masculine, they don't ask themselves, like they don't reflect that back on themselves, right? So if you're dealing with a woman who's being masculine, they don't say like, well, am I being feminine or am I masculine, right? So it's like sometimes you have to see yourself and like you're not playing the role that you think you're playing, and that's why you're getting this result, right? So the more I've been able to tap into my masculine, the more that, like you're saying, that polarization shifts in the partner, right? Where they're naturally going to want to be more feminine if you're in your masculine, right? And so I don't fault women for being masculine, but I ask the men like, well, what are you not doing or providing that's having this effect, right? So from that perspective, like now you have some control of the situation because all you got to do now is figure out how you can be more masculine and show up more in a more taking more ownership, and you could shift that dynamic. But if you say, well, you know, it's just the women out here, you know, like they're too masculine. Well, now you're saying like, now you're going down the road of like, oh, you're just gonna walk away. Victim, and you're walking away from women.
Yes, it's a victim road, and ultimately, you know, one of the lines that I love to say is like, if you want an angel, you have to be able to create heaven. And so there's a lot of guys out here saying like, I want this beautiful feminine woman, this beautiful angel. Well, have you created heaven? Because angels only live in heaven, and this is the idea a lot of guys have of like, I want this really feminine woman, but then she has to make the money to support us. She has to do this. She has to do all this. And it's like, dude, a feminine woman comes into a space like that because you've created an environment for her to be feminine. And until the environment's there where she can be feminine, she's going to not be in her femininity to protect herself. Right. And so I love that aspect you're talking about of like, it's total responsibility. And I think more of it goes on to the guy. And that's the problem I have with the red pill. You know, I came from the pickup community. I spent 3 or 4 years doing cold approach pickup around the world. I think I went and approached 2,000 women. And so I know that community. But at the same time, it's like, it's personal responsibility. A woman will become feminine when she feels safe. A woman will be sweet when she feels safe and she can know she can follow your leadership in that way. And so I agree completely. The onus and responsibility is on us. And man, I've had relationships where I have not been in that place, and she has not felt safe, and she has not been in her feminine, and it's created absolute chaos in the relationship because I wasn't responding and being accountable in that way. So I agree completely. And I think a lot of the red pill like topic or ideology is like, I'm not going to show her my feelings, and I'm not going to be connected to her in that way, and I'm going to be kind of cold and not caring. And it's like, you miss out on the best gifts of life, the connection and love that comes with a relationship. I've done all this psychedelics, I've done all the drugs, I've been on the beaches in Hawaii and the beaches in Rio and all around the world. There's no better feeling than being in love. And so if you're going to allow yourself to not feel those emotions to protect yourself because you're scared to actually be open and vulnerable to a woman, you're missing out on the best part of life. And ultimately, that vulnerability is courageous. And ultimately, that vulnerability is not weakness if it's owned with personal responsibility and accountability as well.
Yeah, and I think that it's really revealing that that approach is being taken. So if you see somebody who's taking this approach, or they keep, harping on, well, the women are too masculine, and just that whole like pointing the finger approach, that that's a red flag, because as a man, if you're solid enough, you're not intimidated by that, because first of all, you're going to hold a standard. So even if a masculine woman did come in your direction, the standard that you hold for yourself is either going to repel that quickly,
For sure.
or it's going to, like you said, balance out that polarity.
Completely.
So when you look at it that way, you can walk the world confident. Like, look, no, I have a standard for myself. I know you've been masculine with other men, or you treated them a certain way. Like, this is how I'm going to allow you to treat me. This is a standard that I have for myself.
The
And if
boundary.
you don't like that, yeah, boundary, and if you're not in alignment to that, well, I understand. Like, so when you look at it that way, like, it's just so much more empowering, rather than to formulate this idea that the world is, or these women are just, like there needs to be some law implemented to correct the masculinity in women. Like, no, I don't feel like that. I feel very capable to be
Yes.
able to handle whatever comes my way in terms of this situation. Like, I feel capable to be able to set that standard and hold that boundary for myself. So I'm not tripping about what other people got going on. I just know that if it's my environment, like, I am going to, put that boundary up. So simple as that.
I agree completely. And I think ultimately that's the difference that women can feel, right? It's not about the pickup line. It's not about what you're saying. It's not about the business. It's not about how much money you make. It's that deeper core presence of who is this guy and what are his standards. And you can't fake it.
Right.
They can feel it.
That's so true. Yeah, yeah. And so, like, I've been wanting to shift the conversation, because when it comes to this topic, because like, me and my wife, like, we have conversations about this all the time. And so, like, our perspective is a little bit different, because we're been in a long-term, like, committed relationship. So we say, like, when it comes to spiritual development, you don't really start to do that until you're in a relationship. Like, everybody can be at peace and meditating and healthy and all positive and optimistic when you're single, but get in a relationship and see if you won't be tested in all
Oh
those
my
areas of
gosh.
life that you thought that you had mastered.
Completely. There's nothing that tests you more. And especially if you also have a powerful partner, which I think everyone who connects, they should have that person that really does push that boundary, right? I think there's a lot of guys who think, like, oh, I want this, like, this meek woman who does whatever I say and will just listen. And it's like, where's the growth in that? Where's the connection,
Exactly.
the polarity in that?
Well,
And go ahead.
Yeah, I just got to get this out, because this is something that I see. Like, that's so true. Like, the reason these men want these kinds of women is because they don't want to be challenged. And the reason they don't want to be challenged is because they don't feel equipped to deal with the challenge.
Completely.
So they're like, let me find a woman that's not going to challenge me, because I don't feel confident in my ability to be able to navigate what she throws at me. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to tolerate disrespect, but if she's holding you to a certain standard that you don't hold to yourself, that's going to feel bad to you. It's going to feel like there's going to be something in you that's not going to feel good about the fact that the person that you're with has a higher standard than you, right? But when your standard is higher than the person that you're with, or you're pushing the boundary or the limits of that standard, whatever they throw at you, you're already in alignment to, because you're holding yourself to it, right?
For sure.
So a lot of men are out there, like, looking for the woman that's going to be quiet, but really it's exposing that they're intimidated by the challenge of it, right? So that's the kind of, like, the thing that you don't see them talk about, but that if you have the eyes to see, you'll see, like, that's what's really going on.
Yeah.
It ain't that you're so solid that you deserve a nice, quiet, meek woman. It's just that you're so weak and that you're so unable to deal with the challenge that you want to be in a relationship that doesn't bring challenge.
For sure. You want safety, aka you're not being a courageous man. You're looking for safety in that way. And it's so interesting, because the people I know in my life, guys I know that I'm friends with, or people that I start working with that are clients who are in that type of relationship, they're always the guys who are, like, tempted more than any other guy to cheat. because they're bored. They're bored with their partner. It's too easy, and it's the same with women. I was just on a phone call to a woman the other day, and she was like, "Yeah, I just got bored with my previous marriage. He was just a pushover. He was too nice of a guy. It was like there was no challenge there. There was no pushing of those powers together." And I agree with you completely. The biggest personal and spiritual growth we can go through is being in that relationship with each other, which goes back to what we were talking about around the idea of the red pill of never opening up, never being vulnerable. If you're that way, you're not going to go through the growth. You're not going to go through the power of that relationship. You're not going to be able to up-level yourself and up-level the relationship in a way where you guys can be that connected and that in love and that you can go through those experiences in that way together. So I agree completely.
Yeah.
It's about having a powerful partner and being able to ride that lightning, as I like to say.
Yeah, because a partner, especially a powerful partner, will bring you accountability that sometimes you're not bringing to yourself, right? So you can either be like, interpret that accountability as, oh, this person is masculine, or they're just, like, I need to give myself somebody who's not as, assertive or whatever. Or you could be like, oh no, this is good. This is good. Like, thank you for pointing that out. Like, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to improve that area of my life, so it just depends like what mindset you're in. So I think that when we're having a conversation, we're talking about conscious relationships, conscious relating, people who are really, doing the work and can leverage a relationship and the turmoil and challenges that come with that to develop themselves. But I understand, like, out there in the world, they might we're talking about people who aren't operating from that. So it's like they're maybe engaging in relationships to where it's just like toxicity. Like what the woman is
Completely.
The challenge that the woman is bringing isn't coming from a place of self-development, but just a toxic place, a place where, like it's just the dynamic is like, she's just pushing your buttons, but not for your best, not for the interest of your best development, but just because there's something within them that they're dealing with and haven't been able to process. But then that also shows that that's a reflection of you because you've been able to attract this person. So the whole thing is a fucking mess, right? But when we're talking about like,
so it all goes back to you, no matter what.
Exactly, it all goes back. Yeah, it all goes back to the self. So it's like you can't really point the finger. So in the in the relationship community, it's like the women point the finger at the men. These men ain't shit. These men are out here just
There's
fooling
no
around.
more masculine men.
No more masculine.
Blah 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 blah.
And then the men are like, oh, these women out here are masculine. They just want to be independent. So it's like I get it that there's things that you don't agree with, but then it's like, what does that have to do with you? And so if you're attracting that just says everything about you. So you're just exposing yourself. Like if this is all you deal with on an ongoing basis, it's you. Yeah. It's you. This is who you are, and you get more of this because it's not my experience. That's not how I'm interpreting. That's not what I'm receiving. So it must be something within the individual, right? So yeah, I just think that we need to reformulate this conversation and talk about it in a way where there's more accountability on both sides, and to also know the roles that we play, because like I don't necessarily believe that a woman is supposed to be completely meek and quiet and your peace. Sure. I do think that there are aspects of women that are biologically designed to test you and see if you're solid, and that's okay. Like there can be a point where that crosses over into disrespect and you have to, but like I said, if you have your boundaries anyways, that's not going to matter because you won't tolerate that. Completely. But I do think that we have to learn how to interpret, like, is she like pushing me to grow, or is she just trying to demean me? You have to know the difference between those two things, and that it's okay for her to want you to be more solid and test you in that way.
I think that goes back to what you talked about with the conscious partnership too, right? An element of being in partnership with someone who's on that path of growth too, who's willing to say and look at themselves and say, is this my own projection onto you? Is this my own bullshit? Am I just creating problems to create problems, or am I actually, is a problem being created for both of us to work on too? So I think it's really important to have that recognition, because I've definitely seen guys who are in a relationship at times with women who are just creating problems to create problems because that's the frequency they want to live at. And the other way around as well, guys who are just not faithful and not being there for the woman because that's the frequency he wants to be at in the relationship too. But I think when two people come together in that partnership and it's conscious, and they're saying, hey, we're committed to each other, to making this work, and we're committed to actually upping our own growth through this relationship, understanding that this is the most powerful vehicle and vessel that we can actually use for our own personal growth, spiritual growth, emotional growth, physical growth, all of it across the board. It's such a powerful tool. And yeah.
And you're not going to run away from yourself. Like, you can change partners, you know, like all you want. Like, the end of the day, things are going to show up again that showed up in the previous relationship, because it's not about what's happening out there. It's about what's in here. Like, and it's always going to come back to that. That's the reason that I'm able to see relationships like that. That's the reason I'm able to see anything like that. You know, what's the world events, you know, the government, all these things that are happening, I looked at as personal transformation tools. Like, these are things that are happening to me so that I can level up and become a better version of myself. So when you have that kind of approach to life, everything is positive almost in a way. Like, you're almost looking at everything as an opportunity to develop yourself. But if you don't not looking at life like that, you're going to feel burdened and troubled by the challenges of life.
Life is happening for me and not to me. And I
Right.
think that transition, when we can make that, is such a powerful transition, to look at everything in that way, that this experience is happening for my own growth. And it's actually really easy when we look back in the past and we see experiences that we've had, we can actually see that pretty clearly. Like, oh, me being fired from that job was actually for my own growth, to push me to go do this thing. Me being dumped from that person was actually the right thing to happen, for me to actually have to understand my own self-love. And so I love that perspective of looking at everything in life in that way, of this is happening for me and not to me, which is so powerful.
Okay. Yeah. My wife just posted something that we talked about. She said the role of a woman is to nurture. To nurture is to encourage the growth and development of something or someone. So this is the definition. Like, we looked it up, because when people think of, like, oh, a woman is supposed to be nurturing, right? And so when people think of that word, they're thinking like, oh, like, everything's gonna be okay, like that kind of like mothering energy. But there's another side of that. There's a shadow side to that. That is like, how else can you encourage something to grow and develop? And it's what we're talking about, by challenging it, by you know, putting that pressure on it. Like, and people don't like that side. They want the coddling side of nurturing, which is a part of it too. I believe that you should have both. You should be able to encourage with positivity, but then there's that other side where it's like, the nurture, I can also have a stern conversation with you and show you that you're fucking up, and that there's things that you need to be doing that you're not doing. And that's also nurturing, but people don't want to hear that. They just want the warm, loving side. And I get it, but so that's one of the things that we often talk about.
Love isn't lies. Love isn't lies. And so if they're just always going to show up and just be coddling and nurturing to you, that's not real. That's not what you really need. And it's the same thing in personal, close friendships and relationships. The friend who's willing to tell you how it is the friend that actually really gives a shit about you.
Right.
And really cares. The friend who's so easily there to just, oh, it's all good, you did fine. So I agree with that. I love that. And I love that your wife commented on that too. I saw one of her comments earlier too. So she said she's a master at pushing your buttons.
For sure. Like, I think when you're in like such close proximity to people, and this is why I value community so much, because I look at community as just an extension of our relationships, of romantic relationships, or, you know, that kind of relationship. Because the more you deal with people and the more closely you interact, the more situations arise that you will be confronted with yourself. Because like, we can see ourselves in one way, but other people see different angles of us that we might not be able to see. So we're able to be reflected ourselves back to ourselves through other people. So obviously, you know, with my wife and our relationship, there's a lot of interactions and points where we're able to have that opportunity to reflect each other to one another. And sometimes that does come in the form of pushing buttons, and sometimes that comes in the form of like just, you know, deep conversations that are inspiring and like have you reach your potential. But they're essentially both doing the same thing, where they're both just exposing parts of you. So with like a community, imagine having 10 people to do that for you. Imagine, because it's like one thing if your partner is like, oh, you're this way, but it's another thing if 10 people that are in your community are like, yeah, or you're that way.
When she says that, you're like, oh, sure, okay, cool. And then you heard it from the friends too.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. It's so true. And I think, part of the experience I've told you about is living in the Amazon. And I saw that so clearly, right? You're in close proximity and community with other people. And those things are being reflected by the hut next to you, by the other people you interact with. And one of the things they do in the Amazon, actually, when someone is becoming more selfish and the community feels like that person's being selfish, they send them to go do ayahuasca. That's kind of like the punishment to say, okay, you got some self-work to do. The way you're showing up in the community is not a good way.
Right.
Go to ayahuasca. So such a good point around community being another catalyst for that growth.
Yeah, it's just people in general. This is what I say, like, we focus on the food a lot, like nutrition and diet and exercise and, these different self-development tools, which are good. But I think that people are massively just underrated as a tool for self-development. It's just like looking at people and relationships as a catalyst for your growth is, I think, one of the most underrated tools that I don't hear people talking about in the conscious community. It's always about, ayahuasca and health and all these things that are essentially positive. But
for sure,
I think people, for me, is like the top thing that it has leveled me up, because I was doing the fasting. I did 40 days on just water multiple times.
That's incredible.
I did dry fasts. I was raw vegan for like 2.5 years. I was, going up to the mountain and fasting alone. I was doing all these things that were beneficial in some ways, but they do not compare to the development that I was able to have by being a part of a close-knit community that helped me to reflect, to see myself, So that's why I see the value in it.
What does that community look like? I'm curious. Is that a community you guys have in your space there in Hawaii, or tell me more about that?
It was a group that we were a part of. This is a whole different tangent, but this essentially, it was just a group of people that came together online. But it was kind of what you're talking about, like living in close proximity, and we're part of a group who people were interested in self-development and just basically working on themselves. So that was kind of the thing that brought us together. Beautiful. But just being that close to that many people, like we ate together, we slept together, everything was in unison, you know, like it wasn't like, oh, like we chill and then we go to our house and spend, no, it was like we live together, like we exist together. And essentially that's the kind of structure of a tribe, right? Like a tribe is born together and you die together. Like it's not it's not like, you
can't hide yourself. You can't, everyone gets to see that your good parts and your faults.
Right. It's not like a community that we talk about, like you go to the community center, you have a meeting with people for an hour and then you go back home. Like that's not community to me. To me, community is tribe. It's like intimately woven existence.
For sure.
And so we got to experience a version of that. And through that, we were really transformed. And we left that experience and came to Hawaii. And now we're kind of in the process of generating something similar for ourselves, or our own version of that here where we're at, so that's kind of the direction that we're headed.
I have to ask you, I'm so curious after you brought up the 40-day water fast. I think the longest I've done is just under 6 days. What kind of experiences did you have, like spiritual experiences within that? I'm so curious. 40 days of just water, like what was that like?
It was very, it just a different state, like it's not like this state of being that I'm in right now where I have the energy, I can talk to you, I'm expressive. I go into a different state when I fast, where I'm like very mindful of how I exert my energy, because it's limited. Like when I'm fasting, the energy is limited, so I can notice everything that takes energy from me, whether it's just standing up, all these things are super in front of my mind because of, so your body is basically, it's going into a different stage, right? So it's more hyper aware. The senses get heightened for good reason, because it's thinking like, well, we don't have food, so we need to sharpen the senses so that we can increase our likelihood to acquire food. So that's how I interpret it. So all your senses are essentially heightened. Your smell, your sight, your hearing, it's all heightened. And then so when you sleep, a lot of times your dreams are very vivid. A lot of times you're dreaming about food and things like that. So yeah, it's just a different
Yeah,
form of
the
being.
best dreams you can have on a 40-day fast are about food, I'm sure. The
Yeah.
thought about sex, that goes out the window. It's just a buffet is the ultimate wet dream at that point.
Yeah, and it's funny how there's a hierarchy in our own survival, biological survival. It's like the first thing is like food, and then sex comes after that. Because yeah, when you fast, your sex drive just goes down. Like you're not, that's not your priority on the top of your head. Like you're thinking about food, and then if you're dry fasting, you're thinking about water.
Yes.
And you know, so every level, like you're thinking about like some level of density below that you're wanting to do or tap into because you're lacking it. So once you start eating again, your sex drive just goes right back up because your body's like, oh, bet we're covered on the food. We can move on to reproduction, right?
For sure.
So it's just it's funny how it's interesting, and that's one of the value that brought to me is just the awareness, the biological awareness that there is some sort of program that is kind of that's already comes installed in this body, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, the survival program, right? Let me focus on water first, then food, and then sex.
Right. And I would
Dang,
say
man.
probably first comes shelter. Because if you don't, yeah, I think first would be, it is shelter. Like if you're not in a place where you feel like you can even exist, like dry fasting, I think that would probably be the priority in your body to find somewhere safe. Because once you're safe, you can chill out and like, even if you don't have food or water, like you can chill out for a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
But if you're not safe,
and you can sleep comfortably as well too, right? There's going to be no recuperation if you don't feel safe where you're sleeping at.
Exactly.
Wow. Powerful. What else? What else could we dive into?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see if people have any things that they want to talk about.
Let's take some questions from people as well. So guys, drop some questions in the chat. If you have any, let us know and we'll get them answered. Cool. I saw one of your videos on boar hunting on YouTube, which was awesome, man. That looked really cool. I'm gonna go out there and do that with you.
Oh hell yeah, yeah. That's something that it's I think especially men should experience that process. You know, of just going out there on the land and hunting.
Yes.
It's really it's a different experience. Like I never experienced that in my lifetime. I experienced that. You know, like that form of experience, is distinguished from like other experiences that you have because it's so visceral.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of things in our reality aren't visceral. Like they're not, you're experiencing them, but not to that degree to where it's like, oh shit, like that just happened.
This is real.
You know what I'm saying?
This is real right here. There's a spirituality to it as well. I'm going to just answer one question and I'll hop back into that with you. Superstar OB said, how can young men start to embody divine masculinity? I'll let you hop into that first and then I can follow up if you want.
Yeah, I think one of the best places to start is just what we're talking about, like ownership. Like look at your life and your situation and wherever you're at and take complete ownership for everything that has happened to you and for the situation that you're in.
Yes.
Even if there are other people involved, even if, you were born into a certain situation, doesn't matter. Take complete ownership of that reality and realize that it's been your decisions, that you've been complicit in the direction of your life up until this point, whether consciously or unconsciously, and sit in that and realize that. And then
realize it's happening for you and not to you.
Right. And realize it's all been a part of the process to get you here.
Yes.
And then from there, once you have that awareness, knowing that you have complete ownership, well, now you can decide where you want to go. You can decide the trajectory moving forward. And so you can begin to do things differently in a way that's in alignment to the end result that you're ultimately trying to see. So if you start there, like I think that's enough work for a day's work, is just to tap into that and to just take responsibility for your life, because it's so easy to outsource it to other people, to your family, to the partner, but there's no power in that. There's no empowerment in that. And so when you take ownership, that gives you the ultimate reins on your life to be able to direct it in whatever direction you choose to go.
I love that. Yeah, it gives you freedom, the freedom to be able to control it. I know in my own journey in my mid and early 20s, a lot of my programming is victim programming. And so my first level up was with the transition of saying, oh, I'm actually responsible for this. It's not my dad's fault. It's not that we grew up in Africa. It's not this. It's my duty now to change it. And that was like the first step into somewhat of the spiritual awakening, was saying, okay, I have responsibility to change it. No matter what happened to me, no matter how bad it was, it's on me to change it. So I love that as a precursor into stepping into more masculinity. I think the other thing too is really working on the consistency of keeping your word and being consistent with what you say you're going to do. Those two things allow you to develop such a deeper and stronger relationship with self. And then allow you to hold other people to higher standards too. One of the things I often see when I'm coaching guys is if they don't keep their word to themselves, they let everyone walk all over them, because you can't lie to your subconscious. You can't lie to how you treat yourself. Right. Your subconscious knows. And so if you don't treat yourself well, if you don't keep promises to yourself, if you let other people step on you, if you let yourself step on you, you're going to let other people step on you as well. And I think that's one of the big things is keeping that word, being accountable, being consistent, and then you can start to hold other people to a high standard too, set boundaries, because you have boundaries with yourself.
And a lot of times you won't even have to do that directly. It'll just be, it'll like your reality will arrange itself around you. Like people will start to behave a different way because you're setting yourself, you're holding yourself to a high standard, that people know that in order to interact with you or to be in your life, they're going to start to have to mirror some of that, accountability and that standard. And that's something that just naturally manifests, that you don't necessarily have to communicate to people. But it's like, okay, if we connect and we schedule a meeting and you don't show up, like you just let me know, and you can play it off as just like, oh, well, I was busy, my bad. Like, but I already, like me, like I'm already looking at you a certain way. Like I'm already like have a perception of you. Like you're communicating to me something, even if you don't know it, even if you have an excuse for it. Like I'm already like, oh, like this person doesn't show up like that. Like they'll make plans and it's easy for them to find a justification not to show up. I do this with clients. I do this with just people in my life in general. Like if you schedule something, you don't commit to it, like on such a micro level, like that's just a reflection of the macro of how else you show up in your life. And it's not that I'm trying to be nitpicky, but these things mean something. It means something when you say that you're going to do something and you don't do it. That is telling me something, and it's not unjustified to be aware of that.
Completely. I agree. And I think that standard to hold oneself to is the way to start to step into that greater masculinity, which was the question that asked. Some new people are joining. You guys feel free to ask questions. I'm seeing what other people are writing now. We're answering questions at this time. But yeah, what else would you say for stepping into more of that masculinity? What are other thoughts you have outside of what we said?
I would say some form of physical discipline. Pushing your body for me is crucial. Like I do weight training, I also do running, but also like even body exercises, like with your body weight. Like I've seen you've been doing your burpees. Yep. Like burpees, if you want to like. Because it's not just physical. Like last year, I was doing this whole burpee challenge, like for myself, where I was just basically trying to see how fast I could do 100 burpees.
Yep.
And when I first started, I was like at 11 minutes. It took me like 11 minutes, as fast as I could, to do the burpees. By the time I ended that challenge and like 25,000 burpees later, I was down to like 5 minutes. So, but I remember like in that process doing those burpees, like. It wasn't necessarily the physical. It was like something that happened in my mind. Like I was almost meditating, because that movement is so repetitive that that you get used to just doing it. You don't have to think about doing it. So you get into this meditation to where you're hearing your inner self try to like talk you out of like, oh, maybe you should just stop. Or maybe
slow
it's good
down,
enough
slow
for today.
down a little bit.
Right. Like, is this even good for you? Like all these things, like that's what I noticed. Like your body is really good at finding excuses, is finding reasons to get out of shit. So it's like you as to step into your masculinity is more stepping into being able to hear that voice, but not necessarily let it dictate your actions. Right. Like I hear you. Yeah, I know it's hard, but we're gonna keep going. Like, you know,
Yes.
like I know there's doubt in there, but I'm gonna keep doing it. You know.
And that voice right there, I think it's so important what you brought up right there. That voice is the same voice that holds everyone back from the life they really want. Because there's this fallacy right now online. I'm going to hop on this tangent a little bit of like, I need more information. When I have the right information, then I'll have the life I want. But the reality is, all the information's out there. Anyone who's on this call right now can hop onto YouTube and learn how to invest from Warren Buffett, the best investor in the world. They can learn how to grow a business from the best business minds in the world. They can learn how to get in shape from the best physical trainers in the world. But where are the results? And the results are coming back to that inner voice. And it's really a game of you versus you. And I think that's what so many people forget in this idea of I need more information. Once I get more information, I can do it. And so I agree with you completely on the burpee thing. It's more about that consistent, let me hear that voice. Let me see what it's telling me, and let me understand how to beat the voice. And once I can beat myself, I can beat the other games of the world. I can beat the other things that are going on. But it's first about that inner journey of beating self. And so much of that is that pushing against that voice. I call it the governor in my program with guys. It's like this programming. It's the same thing that prevents a guy from going and talking to a girl he sees at a coffee shop he wants to. It's the same thing that prevents someone from posting their first video on social media. It's the thing that's trying to keep them safe. And really, it's actually keeping them from their highest and best. And so I agree completely with the burpee thing. It's about pushing against that inner voice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's very simple. Like what you need to start is very simple. Like I can tell you right now, like just start with your body weight, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and squats, and do that 5 times a week. There, you got the answer already. Go start. Like you don't need more information than that, because that right there is going to get you started, right? Like in through that process, maybe in a month, you'll learn some new information. But if you get started, you'll become more interested in that. So you'll start to watch more content around that. You'll start to gravitate more towards that energy and that conversation, that topic that you're now a part of, because you're actively participating.
Love that.
It's just that simple. It's not that hard. Like it's really simple, and you have enough information to get started today. But you're saying, like you're waiting for this dissertation to be clear so that you can feel comfortable navigating it, when no, you just take the plunge, you just get started.
That's it. I love that. Ozzy Man asked a question. He said, can you guys dive into emotional release? So emotional release, he asked specifically for men, but I think we can cover it for both men and women. I can talk a little bit about a thing that I use for emotional release. There's a form of meditation that I like to use. I think a lot of people know that, like when kids and dogs are scared, one of the things they do is they shake. And so one of the meditations that I really enjoy is like an actual shaking meditation, where I do this for like 10 or 15 minutes. And I find that as I'm in that process, it becomes meditative, and a lot of emotions start to come up in that process for myself as I'm moving that somatic body. So that's a way I've used for emotional release. I have some other tools, but I'll let you comment on that if you have something you want to talk about.
Yeah, and this is something that I probably dealt with, and I think this is something that also is associated with like this stunted development of the masculine in oneself, is the inability to channel that emotion, the inability to deal with emotion when it comes up, So for me, it's been about communication. So emotion, when it comes into you, right? If you don't communicate it, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just stored up, right? So we tend to bottle it up, and then we let it get to this point to where it just explodes and then ends up hurting somebody, right? So just like you're saying, I think what you're doing with the body is you're moving energy, right? So what you're trying to move that emotion and release it, instead of like holding on to it. So very similarly, I think even when you have a conversation with somebody and you communicate the thing that maybe is making you feel emotional, or that, like, say a partner does something and you feel a way about it, but you don't want to address it, and you just store that. And I think that manifests itself in ways that aren't harmonious or balanced. So learning to address things as they come and vocalize the things that we are not in agreement with in the moment, rather than waiting for it to bottle up, right? Or you wait for the moment till you have an argument and you use it as ammo to retaliate against the other person, right? It's like, oh shit, now you want to bring that up. Like, that was like a week ago. Yeah, but you didn't voice it in the moment. So now it's just become ammo to basically shoot back at your partner, where this is your partner, this is your team, this is your community, this is the person that you're building with. So why are you attacking them? But it was because you have not learned to address and vocalize and communicate the things that hurt you and the feelings that you're experiencing. So I think this is a topic of emotional intelligence, and learning to develop that.
I think the biggest part of that is the actual courage to just speak when it happens. And it goes back to like not being the nice guy and stepping into greater masculinity for the men, and also for the women as well, stepping into that power of saying like, hey, that thing happened to me, it affected me, let me say it now. And that is the most uncomfortable time to say it.
And you don't even
it's scary to say
have to say it well. Like you could like barely get it out and like squeak your voice, but it's just about saying it. And over time, I think you do get better at saying it without like stuttering your way or crying or like whatever emotion you're feeling, but you just have to say it. Like, I think you just have to get it out.
Completely. And that courage right there, that's so powerful in relationships, right? We talked about the testing with women as well, right? Women will test. And if you're not willing to say it right then and put that boundary down, that's only going to be problems that you're burying for later that are going to come up. And it happens on both sides with both men and women. So I agree completely. That's such a powerful way to release the emotion, is never let it get buried deep. When it comes up, address it then. And it's scary, but it's such a freeing process. One of the things, I think you've seen my Instagram stories, but one of the things I try and do every day is do something that scares me.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah, perfect. I'll hop into that. Like the power of that allows me to, when I have those moments, to say, okay, cool. I'm gonna speak my truth in that moment. And it's a muscle. It's that same program we talked about earlier. It's a muscle that you have to continue to work on, and the less you work on it, the more out of shape it's going to be, and the more you're going to let it just slide by. And so the thing I do every day that scares me, there's 3 things I do. I do 100 burpees minimum. I do meditation, 30 minutes minimum, and then I do the thing that scares me. And the thing that scares me oftentimes is this. It's a conversation I need to have with an employee. It's a conversation I need to have with a client. It's a conversation I need to have with a partner I'm working with. Whatever it is, it's really speaking my truth in that moment. Or if that's not coming up for me in that moment, it's like, cool, let me outreach to someone. Let me reach out to my ideal client. Let me go talk to a pretty girl in a cafe. Whatever it is, let me go to a dance class. It's finding that way to continue to be in a place of doing things that scare me. And what I find, and I make all my clients do it too, their life just becomes more and more of a really powerfully felt and lived experience that they enjoy, because they're actually living life where it's meant to be lived, which is on that edge of feeling comfortable and also pushing their edge as a human being. So yeah, it's that. I can talk more about it if you have more questions, but those are some of the things.
I think that's really powerful. Like, I love that. And I've seen your story, and I've often thought about, like, I wonder what that looks like for him. But then I'll also ask myself, well, what does that look like for me? Like, what would I do that would be uncomfortable on a daily basis? So, and also it's like the lag time reduces, right? So it's not that you have to immediately get, like, you become perfect, like you address things in a moment. But I think what happens is that over time, the lag time between that thing happening and you addressing becomes less and less.
Yes.
to the point where like, right, like somebody might say something to you and okay, like you let like an hour go by and then you come back and address it. And then maybe after that, like someone says something to you that you didn't like and you might step out of the building and then let me go back and say something, you know, and then eventually it gets to the point where they say it and you just because you flex that muscle, because you worked it out, you can just respond in time because it's just so natural to you at this point to address when there's something that is bothering you. So I've definitely been aware of that in my experience.
I love what you talked about there with the lag time, because that is totally it. There's, as the muscle gets worked, as the ability to speak your truth, as the ability to step into courage in those moments, the more you're doing that, the more you can just say, oh, someone said that thing I don't agree with, or I don't like, or I don't appreciate. Let me say it now. Let me say it now. Let me not bury it. And the less you do it, the more the lag time is there. So like your example earlier, it's like you're in a fight a month later with your partner and you're like, remember when you did this? And it's like, why are you bringing that up now? Like,
Right.
Why didn't you bring that up earlier?
Yeah, and that's where the real growth and development comes, because I think those things are a lot more challenging typically than, changing our eating habits or working out or these things that they're not really requiring other people to execute, so it's like this relationship's like a partnership. So it's like you have another energy that also has their point of view, that also has their opinion, their way of expressing themselves, and you have to navigate how to harmonize with that. And that's not always easy, because it's two different energies. It's not just you. Now you're thinking about others. And so I think that we come from a world where we struggle to do that because a lot of our experience has been so independent and so individualistic that we have only been programmed to think about ourselves. And so when we get into relationships or partnerships, it becomes a wedge between our relationship of who's right and who's wrong, rather than like, how can we both work together and figure this out? Like people aren't
Yes.
coming from that space. They're trying to
Yes.
beat one another.
We're on the same team figuring out the problem, and we're fighting that problem. I think that's such a powerful frame to come from in a relationship. Katie Reed said, I've been living in this safe comfort zone for way too long. Get out of that comfort zone, Katie. Let's go. This is the push. Do something tomorrow that scares you. Let's go.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Just take that plunge. You'll figure it out along the way.
That's it. Brother, I'm gonna run. My phone is actually about to die. I'm trying to charge it, but I'm at like 4% right now.
Yeah, I got a call coming up too. I was
Cool.
just about to do, but this was a really good live. I'm glad we came on here and shared.
Me too, man. Thank you for all your perspective and insights. Super appreciated as always, and looking forward to catching up again soon.
All right, you as well, brother.
All right. See you guys.
Peace.